Okay, everybody, we went ahead and started the recording. Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Palma from Swiftland, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Tapping into Employee Talents. And today's presenter is Linda Bruno. Linda has been developing and conducting training workshops for libraries and other organizations for more than 15 years. She offers workshops on topics ranging from leadership skills to returning balance and lots of areas in between. Linda received her MBA from the University of Florida and has years of experience in hands-on management positions. She develops her workshops based on solid research and, more importantly, real-life application. Please welcome Linda Bruno and enjoy her webinar. Linda?
Thanks so much, Kelly. Welcome everybody to today's session. Just a little bit of a heads up. Just as Kelly was putting on the recording, I got a message that the connection was lost with Adobe. My internet connection was still okay, but Adobe said, we're trying to reconnect you, and it did. But I just wanted to let you know that if I disappear for a moment, for some reason, Adobe doesn't like me today. But anyway, we are going to get started talking about tapping in. Think of that term, just that little bit of a phrase, tapping in or tapping into, whichever one, but both of them can be used. If you think about that tapping in regarding a conversation, you get in the middle of it. You experience the entire part of it, don't you? Because you're in that process. And that's what I want you to think of when you think about tapping into employee talents. Because so many times people go to work someplace and they have not even hidden talents. They have talents, but nobody's really paying attention. And if nobody's paying attention, they don't necessarily get to use those talents. By the way, you did get a link for handouts with the link that got you in the room today. It said handouts attached. It was highlighted in blue. So if you have a chance to print those off, you might want to do that. There's some really very foundational information in the handouts that might be helpful to you in the future. So feel free to do that so that you have them available as we walk through today's session. And as so many of you, I recognize names in the room. Many of you know I like to do fill in the blank to help people retain the information. So that's what your handouts will give you today. So thinking about that, I want to kind of define what the word talent means, because I think sometimes we just think it's something somebody is really good at. They can get it done quickly. They're efficient. That's a talent, but not necessarily. If you look at your handouts and on the screen here, there's some defining issues among these words. Competence is being able to do things to an acceptable standard. I am competent, or I should say somewhat competent, in using Excel, but I don't use it very often, maybe once a year. And so therefore it's not a talent for me. I can do it. And if somebody asked me to do it, what I would turn in would appear as if I was very natural at that, but I'm not. I'm competent in that. Talent is our natural abilities. Let me give you a real life example. I had a couple of friends that were singers. They both sung in a choir. And one of them was like a bird. She was so talented. It was so natural. It just flowed from her. She could close her eyes, and it was if somebody was just turning on a switch. The other person loved to sing and would do it at every opportunity, but was just competent, basically. She was pleasant to listen to. It was fine, but it wasn't that natural ability. And that's what we're looking for in our employees, the natural abilities, because when they're able to use that so that they add value for our organizations, for our patrons, for their coworkers, then that becomes a strength, doesn't it? And the more we can develop that strength and help them develop it alongside, then they are more of a benefit to us. And guess what? They also enjoy what they're doing. Jennifer said, something you don't have to work at is a talent. I think so, Jennifer. Yeah, that's a kind of a good thing, isn't it? Although I know some people that don't have to work at things that I wouldn't classify as talents necessarily. You know, I have a person in my background that was very snarky, and I guess you could call that a talent, very witty, but to a very detrimental degree. But yes, absolutely, Jennifer, you're right. I love to paint, watercolor paint. but it's not a natural ability. I have to really work at it. I look at other people that paint and I think, how's come I didn't get some of that? But here's the key. How many employees do y'all work with? Just type that into the chat box if you would, just a number. That's all I want to see right now. 35, 10, 30, 6, 3, 10, 5, 24, 7, 20, 20. So thinking about that, think about all of the wealth of talent you have. We have 6, 3 to 4, 15, 22. Look at that. Even if you only have a couple of people, there is talent there that we need to dig for, isn't there? Natalia said yesterday, I heard on TV when someone was talking about the excellent people skills, and I like the expression, even if it's not exact wording, you cannot be brilliant to start on some tasks. Only if you start working on it could you become brilliant. Yes, absolutely. But here's the thing, Natalia, I can get very good at Excel because I'm pretty determined, but it still will never be that natural talent, will it? I will become better at it. And there are many cases in your workplace where you may not have the opportunity to tap into talents, where something just simply needs to be done, right? And that's okay. That's expected. That's very natural. But what we're talking about today is let's peel back the onion a bit and see where we can plug into people's natural talents, because then let me just ask you. Let me ask you the question. Why is it important to be intentional about tapping into their natural talents? Why is that important? No right or wrong answers here, but what attracted you to this webinar today? What made you think this would be a good topic for you to kind of refresh your thinking on? Why might it be important? I came up with my own list, which I'll share in a moment, but I'd like to know what you think. It helps with motivation. Absolutely, Nancy. And when we talk about motivation, here's something we don't always think about. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and I've had groups where they want me to come in, and I'm not exaggerating, for an hour and motivate their people. And although people have called me a motivational speaker, and I certainly hope that I help get them excited and enthused, motivation of that type comes from the inside, doesn't it? It comes from an intrinsic place where they are excited and enthused themselves, and nobody can force them to do that. So absolutely, it helps with motivation because it's something that they're internally fed by, if you want to think of it in those terms. You create engaged employees. I don't know about you, Tori, but I'll take those all day long. I would take somebody that's really engaged because I tapped into their talents over somebody that became very skilled at Excel, but just did it rotely, just did it because it was there in front of them. That engagement makes it more fun for everybody, doesn't it? It boosts their confidence, absolutely. And in today's world, and I don't know that it's ever going to change at this point with social media and all the meanness that's out there right now, we need to boost people's confidence, not fakely, not in a shallow way, but to really let them shine. And Angel said it improves the work environment. Absolutely, it surely does. And Leslie said, knowing everyone has strengths and talents and discovering them. That's fun. It's like if you remember what the first slide showed, it showed the little treasure chest. And that's really what we're talking about here, isn't it? Natalia said, sure, I mean, even if you do have a talent, but have never applied your skills. Absolutely, Natalia, you can't be sure you actually have it. And what was sad about the two singers that I told you about, the really talented one just kind of phased out of it and quit singing. And I was kind of envious of her because I thought, wow, you have this natural gift, this talent, but you're not even sharing it with people. And that's exactly right, Natalia. If you don't use it, you can't be sure you have it. And certainly nobody else knows you have it, right? You want to grow your people, Susan. Absolutely. And paying attention, see that word intentional on the slide? Paying attention to people so that you do know what some of their talents are, you find out what some of their talents are, it helps them feel like they've got a place in your organization. Doris said, have staff do activities and work that's meaningful for them using their natural talents. Meaningful is another key word, isn't it? And Jennifer's right in there with it, efficiency. I'm a lot more efficient at things that I'm talented at. Picking employees for assignments they're good at and they enjoy them. I'm more efficient, I'm more productive, and I had a good time doing it, and I'm ready to do some more. And Robin said the workflow is easier because if people are doing what comes naturally. Yep. And Ursula also said morale. Rhonda said because it helps people be more comfortable in their work. Yeah, I don't want to get up in the morning, Rhonda, do you? And think, oh no, what are they going to give me today that I really don't like to do or I'm really not very good at? I have enough of those imposter syndrome thoughts of things I might not be good at that I don't want to face my work that way every day. And Susan said it's more enjoyable. It strengthens the organization. It can't not strengthen it, can it, Liz? When you've got people doing what they love, what they're naturally good at, other people are observing that, all the puzzle pieces fit. And that's important, isn't it? So here are some of the things that I put, which several of you already mentioned. People are more engaged. Somebody mentioned that word, engaged or engagement or whatever we mentioned earlier. But again, being engaged is, to me, one of the best blessings you can have in your work is that you're engaged in it to the point you've heard the saying, find something you love to do and you'll never have to work a day in your life. I joke because when people ask me when I'm going to retire, I say never. And they look at me like I have horns because most people don't like their jobs. But after my husband passed away, as a matter of fact, just about 6 months ago, he's been gone for 4 years now, but I was going through some paperwork. He taught college online and he had folders of different classes, and I just needed to clean out that paperwork. I had kept it for a while in case the school needed it and so forth. But I came across one of his folders and I opened it up to see if there was anything in there I needed to hang on to even longer. And taped on the inside of that folder was a fortune that he must have gotten at some Chinese restaurant that we ate at. And it said, there is only one success: to be able to live your life in your own way. Now, you know what? You can't do that if you're not tapping into your talents, can you? So more engaged is huge. Better retention. People want to stay in a place where they feel valued, where they feel appreciated, where they feel recognized and noticed. And that all comes down to that being intentional about tapping into their talents. They'll stay longer. I've known people that have stayed in jobs that paid less and had fewer benefits because their boss recognized their talents and appreciated them. I saw a survey again the other day, and this survey's been done for over 50 years periodically in different areas and with different people. But always what floats to the top or near the top is people want to feel valued and appreciated in their work. So better retention is one of those kind of unspoken things. Yes, absolutely, Yasmin. Productivity, a positive environment. How many of you, just say yes, how many of you have experienced any negativity anywhere around you in the last 3 days? Just say yes or no. You see a capital yes there, right, Jennifer? Yes, with lots of S's after. Oh, I'm glad to see some no's in there. But you'll see the majority of us have experienced, if you've watched the news, if you've pulled up something on the internet that brings up other headlines, if you've looked at any social media, whatever, there's probably been some negativity out there. And I want to add as much positivity as I can to that. And knowing that we're using people's talents can help do that. So that's why it becomes even more important. And as somebody mentioned, productivity is a key piece of that. We're not going to leave that behind. I'm not going to make it all warm and fuzzy and rainbows and unicorns. Of course, we want people to be productive. And sometimes I've talked to supervisors, managers, directors, bosses, whatever the title might be, who believe in the carrot and stick theory, that I'll dangle out a raise or a promotion or an award of some sort, and then I'll hit them with a stick. And obviously this is just all metaphor, but I'll hit them with a stick to make them work harder. That doesn't work with me. If you hit me with a stick, and that stick is typically verbal in our workplace, where we're degraded or somebody tries to intimidate us or humiliate us, my productivity doesn't go up. My productivity goes up when I know you've recognized my talents and you appreciate them. Natalia said, our team is now better than ever. That's why the work is awesome now. It was not this way before. That's wonderful. And it's amazing, isn't it, Natalia? As often as this is publicized in all the writings we read from library journals and from other publications, or we see TED Talks or whatever about what it takes to be a good leader. And yet there are a lot of quote, and I'm using air quotes here, there are a lot of leaders out there who don't get it. So I love that your team is now better. Other things, I put personal growth, and somebody mentioned that earlier. Help them grow, help them learn, help them develop. You know, a few years ago, and I don't know that this is the case quite as much right now, but I'm going to say maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, when I was traveling around to different libraries, one of the main topics was, we haven't done any succession planning. And what typically happened in succession planning was the next person in line as far as seniority moved into the slot. But what if that's not their natural talent? I knew somebody a long time ago that was promoted to a supervisor and actually went after 3 months and asked to be put back down to his regular job because he didn't want to be a supervisor. Nobody had paid any attention to what his talents were. They just figured he was next in line. So I saw a TV show the other day. It was a drama. I don't watch many of those, but this happens to be one I enjoy. And the fellow had been passed over for a promotion, and the person that got it was just highly skilled, highly qualified, highly talented, good people skills. And the other person said, it was my turn. And that's not the kind of environment we want to be in, is it? So personal growth to me is one of the best reasons. It may not be the biggest, it may not be the most important, but it's one of the best that people get to enjoy personal growth. And all of this that we've talked about here, all of the other things that we've talked about, the many that you all mentioned, the few that I've mentioned here, all of that leads to better service. You've all been in situations where you've been the customer. You've walked into some place when we were allowed to do that, and you felt like people were really in their groove, so to speak, that they were really enjoying what they were doing. They were having a good time, and you enjoyed your time there. So better service actually results from us tapping into employee talents. Many, many years ago, I lived in Atlanta, and there was a restaurant there called Gee Golly Molly's, and they served good burgers, but they also had the 50s music on and dancers, and not weird dancers, just people having fun dancing. So when the music would come on, all the servers would stop wherever they were. They would put food down on a table that didn't belong to them or whatever, and they would dance to that song. And then when the song was over, they'd pick their stuff up and they'd be laughing and smiling. And you know what? We went there as many times as we could because the service was great. Food was okay, but the service was good. And you want your library to be that way, don't you? Jennifer said, when you enjoy what you do, then everyone benefits. The work environment is more comfortable. Like the other Jennifer said, efficiency increases. It's good for the system. Morale's good when you're doing what you love. Absolutely. And let's be perfectly honest. We don't all get up every morning with sunshine hanging over us. There are days where we're tired or we're stressed or something is going on. So it's not going to be perfect. And I don't want to be misconstrued as saying it is. But looking on, if you remember the teeter-totter of years ago, if you're looking at a balance scale, so to speak, I would rather err on the side of tapping into people's talents and having it that way most of the time than just handing out work to whoever walks by. And usually it's balanced on the side of being negative. And then all of that, of course, leads to a better image. That leads to better results. That leads to better statistics. And as much as I hesitate to even bring statistics into it when we're talking about efficiency and productivity and all those kinds of things, there are people looking at our statistics, aren't there? When we do budgets, when we ask for grants, when we try to get more funding, whatever it might be, people are looking at numbers. So ultimately, if we can do all of the things that we talked about, which will lead to better service and a better image, then the statistics will also follow along because that's where people will want to be. I have had people tell me that they don't go to the library that's closest to them because the people don't seem happy. I've actually had people say that to me. And they've said, I will drive a couple miles extra to go to XYZ library because everybody seems to love what they do. Isn't that wonderful? I want to be that library, don't you? I mean, I'm not a library, but I want to be that library. So when we're thinking about those employee talents, let's look at some things that we need to keep in mind that don't often come to the surface. See, Angel's been told that too. It's sad, isn't it, Angel? I kind of was really sad when I heard it, but I totally got it because I've been in libraries where I worked with the workforce board many years ago here in Marion County, and they would send me out to different areas. And then I worked with Project Compass, which was a nationwide program, and the state sent me all over the state of Florida. So I've been in a lot of libraries along with the other libraries that I deal with on a regular basis. And I've gone to some where people didn't, and I'm no prima donna. Any of you that know me know I'm not a prima donna, but I would get there and the tables wouldn't be set up. And I walked into one library once and they had those big round wooden tables that you had to roll to get it in place. And then you lifted it up onto that big leg, I guess you would call it, the underpinnings of it, and nobody would help me. So my thought was, gosh, I'm glad this isn't my local library. And obviously those people didn't feel like, because those are the things you have to do. If you like your environment and you're helping everybody out, you still have to roll the tables sometimes, don't you? So we need to keep that in mind. See, there's several of you. Yes, exactly. I love that your people love your branch. And I don't know if that's Thomas's first name or if L is Thomas's first name. So I'll just say Thomas L. Yes, I love when people love the branch. That's exactly what we want to think about. So I want you to think about the fact that sometimes certain employees' talents are going to be more noticeable. It does not mean that they are less important. It just means that maybe they're more visible, or that particular person is more vocal, more outspoken, more outgoing, more extroverted, whatever you want to call that. And they typically get the attention, don't they? So if we keep in our mind, where are the people that aren't as noticeable? Because they've all got talents. We just maybe haven't tuned into those or tapped into those because the other people were more obvious. Not their fault. They weren't being braggadocious or anything like that. It's just what they do. And so they're more noticeable. But those people that are more in the background are no less important. And that's what we need to keep in mind. And we need to kind of step back and think about that occasionally, don't we? Who have we not really been paying attention to because they are very dependable. They're quiet, maybe they're in the background, whatever their job is. We're not really sure if they even enjoy it because they don't say much about it. And so that's why we have to step back and say, I realize that these people are more noticeable and their talents are more noticeable. You know, the people that do the puppet shows and things like that, those talents are pretty obvious, aren't they? When they're really good at it, they shine. And yet there's so many other things being done that maybe aren't out front, and we need to pay attention. So I always suggest to people that you think about their mind habits or their behavioral tendencies. Some of you hear me talk about that frequently because to me, it's the foundation for everything we do in our lives. In other words, how do we move through life? How are we wired? We can adapt. We all do at work. We don't live in our own little space that we would love to stay in 24/7. We have to adapt, but there's still a lot at our core that will help us recognize what people's talents might actually be. For instance, there's a group that are very people-oriented. They love fun. They're very persuasive. They're creative. They're high energy. They're the puppeteers, right? They're the people out there on stage doing the puppet shows, ad-libbing, having a great time. What a talent. And you have fun with that. But there are people also that are very decisive. They take initiative. They take the lead. They are very focused on goals. They have no trouble controlling situations and making decisions. And so that's not quite as fun, and it might not be noticed as easily. But it's a natural talent for somebody that can look at a situation, big picture wise, and make good decisions. Then you have the detail person. And this person often gets left in the background because they work very well alone and actually prefer it a lot of times. They're organized, they plan, they have things very structured to the point where some people look at them and think how rigid they are. But in reality, they're just really, that's the way their mind processes things. They look at a project that's coming up and they immediately start breaking it into steps and into smaller actions that need to take place and so forth. That's a talent, because not I can tell you for sure, I have worked with people that do not have even an ounce of that talent, and it's very frustrating for me when I'm working on a project with them. So that's a talent that we don't often think about. Angel said, how do you draw out those talents when they're obviously tired of exerting their positive abilities? We're going to talk about some things you can talk to them about, Angel, here in a minute, and that should help you with that. And by the way, y'all have my email address, and if you want to flesh out something, Angel, if you want to send me a message and just give me a little bit of a synopsis of what's going on, send me an email message and I'll get back to you either later today or tomorrow and respond to some things that might be helpful in that situation. It's on the bottom of your first page of your handouts. I offer it. I try to offer it in every workshop or webinar, because I know things pop into your mind afterwards, or things that are a little deeper that we need to flesh out a bit. So feel free to drop me an email after this is over today, because I think this is such a key topic for people to consider. I'm always happy to talk to you about any of the topics that I talk about, because it helps me see what you need from me next time. So then the other one that I hadn't mentioned yet was the person that's very intuitive. They like harmony. They like consistency. They like routine. Now, what you're hearing there is somebody that's kind of quiet and soft-spoken and laid back, and that's a wonderful thing. That's basically how they're wired. But there are some talents that come into play with that. That talent might be mediation of some sort. They don't want to be the target of conflict, but they're really good at mediating when people are struggling over something. So if you're in a meeting where things might get tense because there are differences of opinion, then this person can kind of draw people together a lot of times. And sometimes we don't even recognize that, do we? Because we never gave any thought to how people are actually moving through life. And we're going to dig into that just a bit more. I said it's how you're wired. People call that your personality. Some people call it your temperament. There's a little bit of a nuance between those two. I love to call it your behavioral tendency, because it truly is a tendency. It's where you inherently go without even thinking about it. When you're stressed, when you're tired, when you're moving 100 miles an hour, that's who you are. And although you can adapt to a lot of different things in your library, this is what comes out naturally. So think about that when you're stepping back. What kinds of assignments or projects or whatever might appeal to different personality styles? And on your handouts, you have a line beside these to take a look at them and see. Whoops, excuse me. My trigger finger got carried away there. So let's look at that. When you're thinking about that popular, which was the first one I listed on the handout, the people-oriented person, they love fun. They're very social. What kind of assignments and tests and projects might you give them? That's what we're thinking about when we're thinking about behavioral tendencies. The powerful person, which is the person that's very decisive and takes control and takes initiative and loves goals. What kind of assignments would you give them? Do you see how that's different already? Angel said it's just a general question. We always run across them throughout our work life, nothing very specific. Okay, that's great, Angel, because we're gonna talk about some things you can actually ask people to kind of dig that out. Some people aren't comfortable talking about their natural talents, are they? And it's harder to just observe what might be a good fit for them. Then you have to dig a little deeper. But so we've talked about the popular, who's the fun-loving people person, and then you've got the powerful, who's a goal-oriented person and very decisive. And those aren't naturally the same kinds of observable actions, are they? And the popular is typically the one that gets the most attention because they are fun-loving. People love to be around them. They're very sociable. So they're going to be the noticeable ones, aren't they? The noticeable talents, where they have the children's summer reading program or whatever it might be. The powerful is going to be observed as being a little harsher. And yet that's a talent in a lot of situations. The perfect is one of those styles, one of those behavioral tendencies. And this is that person that's so detail-oriented that they drive the popular crazy. Because the popular just wants to have fun and wants you to lighten up, and the perfect saying, yes, but this column did not add up the way it was supposed to, or this schedule is 2 days off, or whatever it might be. And that's a talent because it's so natural for them and they love to dig into it. This is the person that takes their, what we used to use as a checkbook, or their, let's say, their bank statement online, and they will spend as much time as it takes to get that to balance because it actually feels good to them. It feels like things are back in order again when they do that. And that's a talent for people. And then the peaceful person, like I said, is the person that loves routine, loves that flow. They love teamwork. They're contributors. They don't necessarily want to be put in charge. And so if you've got a powerful that you're trying to get to be on a team and just be one of the group, many people are very good at adapting to that because they know themselves well. But some people who don't recognize that about themselves want to take charge. And just the opposite happens with the peaceful. You've got them on a team where you would like them to take the lead because it's something they're really good at, and yet maybe they're not comfortable with that. So all of that just comes down to the fact that it's their personality or their behavioral tendencies. And the more tapped into that we can be, the more we're going to figure out what it is that they really are good at, that is just flows out of them. Another thing is to consider rotating people through different areas. That would be one answer to your question, right, Angel? Is if you want to draw out people's talents, think about periodically rotating people. Let's, now some things take really in-depth training and you're not going to be able to do that. I recognize that. But there are some areas that maybe somebody could shadow somebody and it might spark an interest for them because they had no idea that this particular part of the job involved whatever it is you're showing them. And it really interests them. If they're not around it, how would they ever know? So sometimes rotating employees through different areas will help them, for one thing, either show them what they really enjoy, and sometimes it shows them what they never want to do if they don't have to. Again, sometimes we need to step up and take care of things because we're short-staffed or whatever it might be. But sometimes it helps them see maybe something that's going on in the library that is very obvious and does get a lot of attention, and somebody is thinking to themselves, gosh, I wish I was part of that. And then when they really get involved and they see the work that's involved, it's not really their bailiwick. It's not their wheelhouse, so to speak. So consider rotating to help dig some of that out. Help them understand where it actually fits into your organization. Jennifer said, my question is practically opposite. How do you draw people out of their comfort zone when needed? Most libraries haven't the personnel to have more than one specialist in crafting, Zoom events, etc. If the go-to Zoom person is sick, the competent but not as confident staff member has to do it instead. Yes, this can be regardless of how much training or practice they've had. They can't or don't want to do it. Absolutely, Jennifer. And that kind of reverts back to my comment that all of us have to step up from time to time, don't we? We've gotten to a point in society where we think we should get up in the morning and everything should be exactly the way I want it. And Jennifer, if it's different for you, that's too bad because I should be able to get it the way I want it. But that's not the way life works. Any part of life, if you're on a committee, if you're in an organization, if you deal with friends or family members or whatever, sometimes you do things that are not your natural talent. And I think just approaching it in that way, we are a team. And we're going to hold people up by stepping up. And that's just what we have to say. We have to acknowledge that we cannot, every single moment of every single workday, give people the work that they love to do. I love my work. I do not like typing handouts, the actual administrative part of that. But I do it anyway because I know that's what helps people learn. So we need to stress that with people, don't we, Jennifer? That first of all, it needs to be an expectation, which kind of goes into maybe not discipline action, but maybe a coaching counseling session where we help them realize that this is part of the expectation of their job, that when people aren't available, we all step in. Maybe we could say, okay, there are 3 parts to a Zoom event. Which one are you most comfortable with? If you can give people options, that's great, and something that they're not really in love with. If there are 3 things that could be done, would they like to be the presenter? Would they like to be the person taking care of the tech? Would they like to be taking care of the logistics. I'm making all of that up, but I hope you understand what I'm saying there, Jennifer. If there are situations where there's more than one moving part, you might be able to offer them options. But I had a friend once that said to me, if you got to do whatever you wanted to do at work, it wouldn't be called work. It would be called fun, right? Would be going to the amusement park. Sometimes we need to step up and do the things that we're not as comfortable with, knowing that when we get the chance, we get to do the things we are comfortable with. But that does circle back to setting expectations and saying to people, I know you'd rather not do this, but we need help today. How can I help you be more comfortable with it? Ask that question. What pieces of it do you not feel comfortable with? Is there training you still need? Is there something I could do to help you along with this? Yes, Angel, giving them the option to start on their strongest ability and hope that leads into their secondary abilities one step at a time. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. To be honest, we work with human beings, and they don't all fall into the patterns that we would like for them to fall into. I still haven't found the book that says how to do that. I'm still looking. The book that says how to make them do exactly what you want them to do. It's not out there. There are a lot that allude to that, but I've read them. They have to behave the way the book says they're going to behave, and that doesn't always happen. I joke that I've read a lot of books on conflict and tension and difficult conversations and all those kinds of things, and I always joke that when you get to page 67, it says, you say this, then they'll say this, then you say this, and then it's solved. The problem with that is they never say what's listed on page 67, right, Jennifer? They always say something different, and then I don't know what to do with that. So part of it has to do with setting those expectations. As Angel said, tapping into the talents that could be pulled out for this particular situation, but helping them understand that everybody pitches in when it's necessary. Yeah, exactly, Kay. They never read page 67. That's exactly right. Yeah, I totally hear you. I'm telling you, I don't know, a couple hundred books. They're not all on difficult conversations, but they're all very optimistic, and that's good. And I've used a lot of the things in a lot of those books, and they do work. But I'm a realist. I tell people I'm a realistic optimist. I'm realistic that you're going to ask people to do a Zoom event, and they aren't going to want to play in the sandbox. But guess what? If there's nobody else to get in the sandbox that day, that's part of the job. Maybe you could say, okay, if you'll help me with, you need to help me with the Zoom event. Not if, because if it's needs to be done, then that's part of their job. But after you help me with the Zoom event, then you can go back and do the craft session with the kids this afternoon or whatever it might be. Help them look forward to the future. That this is just temporary. I'm not going to ask you to do all the Zoom events, but it's something that needs to be done. I'm not going to ask you to do all the knitting, because if you ask me to do that, you're going to end up with a real long string of knitted, whatever those are called, stitches, I guess, and it's never going to shape into anything. But I'd help out, and we'll get through it. It's all part of being a team, isn't it? And let's just put that into the mix. There are some people that are better at playing on the team than others. To be honest with you, I like to work alone. I'm self-employed. I don't have any employees. I love working with you all. I love working with my clients. But on a daily basis, to get my work done, I'm really better alone. And yet I've worked with people on teams, and we've been a really good team because we know we're a team during that situation. And it works for all of us that way. I hope some of that rambling, and I didn't mean to get off on a tangent, but really this does overlap with, yes, we tap into employees' talents, but that doesn't mean we can do it every single day of every single week. We need to be realistic about it. And we need to understand some are not only more noticeable, some employees are more likely to self-promote. They're going to make it obvious that this is what they want to do, and they're going to make it obvious that they're good at it. And that's okay. Again, they're probably not bragging. They just, that's their comfort zone, is doing whatever it is they want to do. And they're going to make it very obvious that they would like for you to give them the tasks and the projects and the assignments that they ask for every single time. And we just have to be honest with ourselves and say, I'll do that as much as I can, but it's not going to happen all the time. And there are going to be times we're doing things that we don't necessarily like to do. Here's the issue with the self-promoters. Nothing wrong with those folks, but while they're self-promoting, the other people are in the background not being given the things they want to do because they haven't said anything about it. I had a session once, and it wasn't even about employee talents. It was about speaking up in meetings. And I said, if you're leading the meeting, you need to tap into what's going on in the meeting and who's not participating and draw them out. And somebody said, it was a face-to-face workshop, somebody said, they're adults. If they want to talk, let them talk. And I smiled and I said, I hear you. And I understand what you're saying because it's true. If they're wanting to say something, they should speak up. But we work with all different kinds of people that may not be comfortable doing that. So it's the same thing. You've got the self-promoters, and it's great when you can tap into their specific talents and they're having a great time, but you need to look in the background to see who's not self-promoting and what you can do to draw them into something that they're going to be more excited about. Danny said the more you show you're willing to learn and you have a great attitude, the more likely you are to self-promote. Yes, absolutely. And what's really cool, Danny, is a lot of times people are willing to learn and have a great attitude, and it has nothing to do with self-promotion, does it? It's just they're good team players. They like where they work. They like the people they work with. They want to help out. It's not even in their thought process to self-promote, but that's exactly what happens, isn't it, Danny? Because I want to work with that person, don't you? I want to work with the person that's willing to learn the Zoom event. I can remember years ago, I had a client, I call myself a pioneer in webinars because this was probably, 18 years ago. I had a client from another state. She'd been a client of mine for a long time, and she called and she said, Linda, you need to start doing webinars. And I knew what they were, and I knew there were some out there, but it wasn't the thing then. And I said, but I really need to be with the people. I need to see, if they're buying what I'm selling. I can see their facial expressions. I can see if they're confused or they have questions. She said, I'm telling you, our budgets have been cut and we're not going to be able to pay travel expenses anymore. And if you want to stay involved with us, you need to do webinars. Well, that was pretty harsh, but she's still a friend. I actually emailed with her yesterday. And I thought, I need to do that. I tell people I wore out 3 pair of shoes dragging my feet into webinars. But I was willing to learn. I was willing to grow. And for as long as she worked with that organization, I was one of the people that presented the most webinars for her. Now, I've grown to love them, but still it's not face-to-face, is it? And yet I know realistically people can't come to face-to-face workshops all the time, especially when there are pandemics or when travel is too far away or too complicated or they're short-staffed or whatever it might be. So just keep in mind that everybody you interact with trying to tap into their talents is going to have different issues in life, aren't they? And it's going to be part of the baggage that they bring in, just like you bring in baggage. Like my friend who was the great singer, for some reason, she did not enjoy singing, even though it was a true talent. She wasn't willing to make it a strength and use that talent. So use praise as an opportunity to ask questions about how they did such a great job on something. After the Zoom event with somebody that really wasn't comfortable with that, if there's an opportunity, and I do not, hear me clearly, I do not want you to make this up. I do not want you to exaggerate or embellish something that's been done. But if you see something that that person did differently, just because that was their natural bent, there's nothing wrong with saying, I love the way you did X, Y, Z. How did you figure out how to do that? Now, you've rewarded that person for doing something that was uncomfortable, and what gets rewarded gets repeated. Again, not to be manipulative, but when they feel like they were recognized for really trying to do a good job in something they did not want to do, they'll be more comfortable accepting the next assignment. They may never want to be the Zoom person, but they'll be more comfortable if you need help the next time. So sometimes just using that praise can help you flesh out what they really liked about that assignment and make them feel good about it in the process. Angel said, I think it's important to have a balance of staff abilities and or competencies because those people you always depend on may not always be there. Absolutely. You need to be able to rely on everyone. It's called teamwork, isn't it, Angel? And everybody needs to know that expectation when they come to work for you. That there are, although here's your typical job, there are going to be times we ask you to do X, Y, and Z because we're a team and we help each other. And we need to serve our patrons or our students or our faculty or whoever we're serving. And in order to do that, if somebody's not available, we all step up to the plate. And even if we're not totally comfortable with what we're asked to do, we'll step in because we all work together as a team. Focus on the good of that, the teamwork part of that, and let them know this is how we roll, right? Absolutely, Angel. It reduces the rate of burnout because not one person feels like, oh my gosh, if I don't show up at work today, the whole place is going to fall apart. Now, every human being in the world likes to feel that way. But every human being in the world knows that's not going to happen. We're all expendable, aren't we? But we don't want to feel like somebody has put so much pressure on us that we have to be there and really don't feel like doing this today, but I have to. Yeah, sometimes that's the case. You've probably done the same thing I have. I've called someplace and it'll be a multi-million-dollar organization and they'll say, well, the person that handles that isn't here today. I actually said to somebody once, half jokingly, what if they get in a car accident and they can't show up for 6 weeks? Are you not going to be able to handle this? So it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's that kind of thought process. Ask for volunteers on new projects. Absolutely, Danny. Cross-training. Again, remember what I said? Rotating those jobs, that's part of cross-training, isn't it? And again, if you can't rotate the actual job, maybe shadowing parts of it might be helpful. So ask for volunteers on new projects. When you sense they are interested in a new project, there's always parts to a project, aren't there? Even a task a lot of times will have more than one little piece to it or an assignment. So say, okay, thank you so much, Angel, for volunteering for that. What part of that caught your interest when we first started talking about it? Because now there your antenna's up, isn't it? And you're fleshing out what draws Angel to this particular job. So I mentioned earlier that we were going to look at some actual questions you could use. You can rephrase these any way you want. Okay, Jose put some information into the chat box for you. Let us know if you're not registered for this webinar and provide the following info, and then if you'd like to be added to the distribution list. So I'll let you read that for a minute before we go on so that you're not distracted from the rest of what we have here. Okay, so the questions you may want to ask to help employees uncover their talents and to help you uncover their talents. And again, rephrase them in any way you want, make the words your own. These are not cut and dried. These are not etched in stone. It's just to give you some ideas of how do I actually find out what this person is interested in, especially if they're one of those quiet people. Ask them things like, what's your favorite part of your job? And here's why I say that. Maybe what you thought was the main part of that particular job isn't really their favorite part. And when they give you their favorite part and it kind of startles you and surprises you, then an easy follow-up question to that is why you prefer that part of your job. Let's take an example. Maybe they tell you the favorite part of their job is the summer reading program. And you instinctively think, oh, they love being with all those kids and all those people and all that interaction. But when you say, why do you prefer that part of your job? What they tell you is they love the planning process. Ruh-roh. Maybe you've assigned them a whole bunch of stuff that has to do with people, and that really isn't their natural talent. Their natural talent is the planning process for summer reading. Do you see how easily those things can slide by us? And we make assumptions about what somebody is talented at because they enjoy a particular project, but what they really enjoyed was something we hadn't really thought of. So just ask those kinds of questions. What's your favorite part of your job and why do you like that particular part? Maybe it's because I did this, I did X, Y, Z, and the reason I liked it is I didn't have to work with people. I'm okay working with people, but if I'm an introvert, working with people all day, every day drains me. And so maybe I don't want to do that all the time. And that's the part I didn't like about my job. Another question, what would you like to be doing that you haven't had an opportunity to do? That goes back to, I think it was Angel's question about how do you draw them out? They may have seen somebody doing something for the last 6 months and they thought to themselves, gosh, I wish that was part of my job, or I'd like to at least try that. What would you like to be doing that you've not had an opportunity to do? I can remember many, many years ago in what I call my former life when I was in the corporate world. I was fresh out of school and it was high school. So I really had no experience, grew up in a small town, and computers came into our world. And we were using computers in a very rudimentary way at that time. It was a long time ago. We were doing key punch, if anybody remembers that term. And I actually was the secretary to the president of the company. And so when they decided they were going to upgrade the entire system, they were going to need people to run the computers, et cetera, they gave tests to everybody in the organization except me. And I was so offended by that. I almost quit my job. And when I finally got up enough nerve, I was very young. When I finally got up enough nerve, I said, I don't understand why I wasn't even offered that opportunity. And my boss said, it's because you're so valuable in your current position. Well, that's nice. And I don't think I would have enjoyed the computer part, but I felt ignored. Nobody ever asked me what I wanted to be doing. Nobody ever asked me if I wanted the opportunity to work on computers. Do you hear that in my voice? And it was decades ago. We're human. We want to feel valued and appreciated. And he eventually said that's the reason, but he never told me that up front. And so I really felt just left out. Angel said, my boss will ask me multiple questions and she and I'll both be sometimes surprised by my answers. I love that, Angel, which will lead me to rethink my intentions for a solution. I love that you're both surprised. That's the way it should be. If everything is so rote that we're exactly the same every time, we're not going to add any freshness. We're not going to draw out people's talents. Danny says sometimes that's how opportunities are offered to you when you open up about other things that you may be interested in. Exactly. Simple question, isn't it? It's not threatening. It's not threatening for you or them. It's not hard to ask. It's not invasive. What would you like to be doing that you haven't had an opportunity to do? I'll just tell you, I'm not sure I can help you do that, but I'd like to know what that is. You need to be clear, because if they say, oh, good, now I get to do this, maybe not. It might not be a good fit. It might not be a good time or whatever, but I'm just trying to find out what you're interested in. I'd like to be able to help you do that in the future. And the only way I'll know is if I ask. What attracts you about that particular task or project or assignment or duty or responsibility or whatever it is? Do you see how you keep peeling back the onion? Not just what would you like to be doing, because if they give you an answer, it may not be the core of why they're attracted to that. So just ask, then what attracts you about that particular task? Because guess what? If you can't allow them to do that particular task or project or assignment or whatever, there might be something else that incorporates the same thing they like about the thing you won't be able to let them do. But there's something else that they could do that's very similar in a certain piece of it. So what attracts you about that? What new skills would you like to develop? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it will tap into their talent, but many times when I ask about a skill, it's something that I do kind of have that little burning passion about. I've just never had an opportunity to explore it. And here's what we need to be real clear about. We may explore it and really not like it. Many of you have probably done that, where you thought you really wanted to learn this. I'm going to jump headfirst into this. And then you go, oh, wow, this wasn't as much fun as I thought it should be. But that's okay. How are you going to learn otherwise? Like somebody said earlier, how are you going to learn about yourself if you don't try? Number 4 was what attracts you, Ernestine? What attracts you about that particular task or project? And what new skills would you like to develop? Now, even if it comes to the end of the day and that person developed a new skill, but it's not a natural talent, guess what? They now have a new skill. If nothing else, they can put it on their resume if they need to use it at some point. But they've got a new skill. And you've got a more well-rounded staff because they've developed that new skill, even though you found out it wasn't quite what they thought it might be. What do you find enjoyable in your spare time? Now, if that's too intrusive for some people, that's fine. You can say you don't have to answer this, but I'm just trying to understand what kinds of things you enjoy that might transfer to your work. Then they might be a little more open about that. A lot of people in the library world, I love research, but then I love to funnel it down into what I think will be applicable for you all. I think my bio might even say that, something about it's based on a lot of research, but more importantly, real life application. And so sometimes I'll read something. I've read whole books before and I'll think, but that's not realistic. Not for the people that I try to help, not for me. So what do you find enjoyable in your spare time? What appeals to you about working in the library as a whole? It's so different for so many people. Some people just love being surrounded by all the knowledge that's encompassed within the library world, even though it's not even physical knowledge anymore. It's not on a bookshelf or whatever in a lot of cases. For some people, it might be, quote, quiet, which we know is not what it used to mean in the library. Quiet libraries in the past were actually quiet, but some people are still drawn to that. So what piece of their job could help that? Oh, thank you. I didn't realize it was the other number 4. Thank you, Thomas L., for answering that. I was thinking it was the last number 4. Number 8, if there were absolutely no obstacles, what career would you pursue? And before I discuss that one, I'm going to read Angel's comment. Sometimes I'm asked to do something I'm really not into doing, and I find that sometimes I end up liking it or just a piece of it. Exactly. And how do we ever know if we don't ask some of these questions and do a little bit of digging, right? That's how we tap in. Tap in. You can't tap in simply by observing because you have no idea what's going inside their head until you ask. So if there were this is just a question to ask people. If there were absolutely no obstacles, what career would you pursue? I found what I wanted to do when I grow up. I love what I do. I am stunned sometimes that I found this after a corporate job. And I'm very blessed by that. Another thing I would love to do if nothing was an obstacle, no money, no issues, no anything, would be to rescue animals. So, hey, maybe I could handle the program at the library that brings in adopted dogs or whatever. Do you see how you start to piece that out? Angel said, oh yes, we did that one. And then what aspects of that particular career? Again, we're peeling back the onion. What career would you have and what aspects? I love animals. So plug me into something with animals at the library or taking groups out to animals or whatever it might be. We just keep peeling back the onion until we tap into their talents. Because here's another thing. Many people don't even know what their talents are. Many people think they might have a talent in an area, but they're so full of self-doubt. Maybe their self-esteem isn't quite where it needs to be, or their self-confidence, whichever it might be. And until somebody starts asking, they don't even know themselves. So be gentle, be kind about it. Let them know you want them to be happy in their work. You want them to really feel like they're engaged as part of this team. And you just keep asking those questions. Exactly, Danny. Many times, wouldn't you think? Sometimes, she says, sometimes it takes someone else to bring it out of them. And I think many times it takes someone else to bring it out of them. The way I get one of the keys for me to start doing workshops at all was when I was in my corporate job. I went to a workshop with a friend of mine. I don't even remember what the topic was. We were both interested in it. We went to the workshop together. And before the first morning break, she poked me in the side with her elbow and she pointed to the presenter and she said, "You could do that." I will never forget her saying that. I didn't actually start doing it for several years after that, but that stuck in the back of my mind and it took someone else to bring it out because that's what I held on to when I knew the corporate job really wasn't working for me anymore. So just ask those questions. Can you think of any other questions you might ask to uncover hidden talents? I know we're at 3:00, but feel free to type them into the chat. Danny said our worst critics are our enemy and we don't see our true potential. Exactly. So how cool is it that everybody in the room today has an opportunity to help other people see their true potential. That is so cool to me. It's one of the reasons I love what I do. I have people that have light bulb moments. That's so exciting for me because I know it can make a difference in your life. And I hope today has made a difference in your workplace, if for no other reason than you get to help somebody else. So just jot down on your handouts if you've got them there. What are you going to do differently to tap in to those talents? Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Remember, you have my email address. If you need me for anything, this topic or anything else, I'm always happy to answer. Angel said a lot of times it's the process that makes me think about other things. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, Linda, for a great webinar. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, Swiftland Facebook page, or messages from our listserv. Linda's next Swiftland webinar will be Wednesday, August 18th, and that will be Managing Priorities. Thank you so much to everyone for your attending, and we hope you have a great day.